Trump's Strategic Priority Report. Date: January 23, 2025. Overview. Following his re-election in November 2024, Donald Trump has outlined a comprehensive set of strategic priorities for his anticipated second administration. These priorities are primarily focused on reversing many of the policies enacted during the Biden administration, all while reinforcing his America First agenda. This report provides a detailed overview of the key areas Trump intends to prioritize, including national security, economic policies, government reform, healthcare, education, and foreign policy. 1. National security and immigration. Trump's approach to national security is heavily centered around immigration reform. His administration plans to implement a series of aggressive measures aimed at securing the U.S. border. Key components of this strategy include reinstating policies. The administration intends to reinstate the Remain in Mexico policy and suspend refugee resettlement programs. Trump aims to combat illegal immigration by ending catch-and-release practices and deploying military forces, including the National Guard, to assist in border security. Drug cartels as terrorist organizations. Trump plans to designate drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations and pursue severe legal actions, including the death penalty for egregious crimes against law enforcement and civilians. Mass deportations. The administration will target undocumented immigrants for mass deportations, focusing on those with criminal records and those who have crossed the border illegally. 2. Economic policies. Trump's economic agenda is designed to establish American energy dominance and promote economic independence. Energy independence. The administration aims to roll back environmental regulations, withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, and promote fossil fuel production to reduce reliance on foreign energy sources. The emphasis will be on deregulation to stimulate growth in the energy sector. Tax cuts. Trump intends to enhance tax cuts, favoring lower corporate tax rates and proposing tariffs on foreign goods to protect American industries. Infrastructure review. A comprehensive review of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act (IIJA) is expected, with efforts to roll back provisions deemed excessive. 3. Government reform. A hallmark of Trump's second administration will be significant government reform measures. Bureaucracy reduction. Trump plans to freeze hiring in non-essential areas and rescind many Biden-era regulations. His goal is to reduce bureaucratic inefficiencies and increase accountability within federal agencies. Drain the Swamp Initiative. The administration aims to combat the perceived weaponization of government against political rivals and ensure that government employees are dedicated to serving the American populace. 4. Healthcare and education. Trump's healthcare and education strategies reflect his administration's commitment to conservative values. Healthcare reforms. The administration plans to repeal the Affordable Care Act and promote state-level control over reproductive health issues, aligning with traditional conservative values. Education policies. Trump aims to support school choice initiatives, potentially roll back affirmative action programs, and eliminate diversity programs within educational institutions. 5. Foreign policy. Trump's foreign policy priorities will include strengthening alliances. Trump plans to bolster alliances, particularly with Israel, while taking a hard stance against nations like China and Russia. Trade agreements. The administration is expected to renegotiate trade agreements to favor American interests, shifting from multilateral to bilateral agreements. Common themes and differences. Several common themes emerge across Trump's strategic priorities. Border security. A significant emphasis on stringent immigration policies and border security measures. Economic protectionism. Protecting American jobs through tariffs and deregulation. Government accountability. A commitment to reducing bureaucracy and ensuring governmental accountability. Promotion of traditional values. Reinforcing traditional American values in healthcare and education. Notably, sources differ in the level of detail provided. For instance, The White House briefing offers specific policy outlines while the Holland and Knight publication gives a broader overview of anticipated themes. Timeline of events. November 2024, Trump is re-elected, leading to discussions about policy priorities. January 20, 2025, Trump formally outlines his America First priorities, detailing immigration, economic, and foreign policy strategies. Subsequent weeks, executive orders reversing Biden-era policies, particularly in immigration and energy sectors, are anticipated. Conclusion. Trump's strategic priorities for his second administration are firmly rooted in a vision of national security, economic independence, and a conservative approach to governance. The policies outlined reflect his established political philosophy and aim to reshape the U.S. landscape across various sectors, ensuring that his administration aligns closely with the America First agenda. The forthcoming months will likely see significant shifts in policy as executive orders and reforms roll out in line with these priorities. The content provided outlines Donald Trump's anticipated strategic priorities for a potential second administration, highlighting several key areas of focus such as national security, economic policy, government reform, healthcare, education, and foreign policy. However, within this content, several counterintuitive points emerge that challenge conventional expectations or present surprising insights. Below, I identify these counterintuitive aspects. 1. Immigration and border security as national security. While national security is often associated with military, defense, and foreign affairs, Trump's emphasis on immigration control as a primary national security issue is counterintuitive. The idea that unauthorized immigration and border security are pivotal to national security contrasts with traditional views that prioritize geopolitical threats over domestic immigration policies. The aggressive measures like mass deportations and military deployment to the border highlight a shift in how national security is defined, suggesting that domestic issues can be framed as threats on par with international ones. 2. Economic independence through deregulation. Trump's strategy to achieve economic independence through extensive deregulation and a focus on fossil fuels presents a paradox. Typically, energy independence is associated with renewable energy initiatives and environmental stewardship. Trump's approach, which aims to bolster traditional energy sectors while rolling back environmental regulations, challenges the prevailing notion that economic growth and environmental sustainability are directly aligned. His prioritization of fossil fuels over renewable energy could be seen as regressive in the context of global climate goals, yet it appeals to a segment of the electorate that prioritizes immediate economic benefits over long-term environmental considerations. 3. Healthcare reform through state control. Trump's focus on state-level control over healthcare and reproductive rights represents a significant shift from federal oversight, which is typically viewed as a safeguard for uniform rights and access. This strategy may seem counterproductive as it could lead to a patchwork of healthcare quality and access across states, potentially leaving vulnerable populations without essential services. The expectation that states would effectively manage these issues contrasts with the common belief that centralized federal policies provide necessary protections and standards. 4. Foreign policy isolationism versus strengthened alliances. Trump's foreign policy approach appears to oscillate between isolationism and a strong commitment to certain alliances, particularly with Israel. The idea that the U.S. could retreat from multilateral agreements while simultaneously asserting itself as a dominant power in bilateral negotiations presents a paradox. This approach challenges the conventional wisdom that robust foreign policy requires active participation in international coalitions and agreements, raising questions about the effectiveness of such a strategy in an increasingly interconnected world. 5. Education reforms with emphasis on local control. The anticipated rollback of affirmative action and diversity programs in education, coupled with the push for school choice, contradicts traditional educational equity narratives. The focus on local control over education, while appealing in its promise to reflect community values, risks exacerbating educational inequalities. The counterintuitive aspect lies in the belief that local governance will inherently result in better educational outcomes, which may not hold true in areas with fewer resources or support for diverse student populations. 6. Tax cuts amidst economic protectionism. Trump's plan to implement significant tax cuts while simultaneously enacting protectionist measures raises questions about fiscal sustainability. Conventional economic theory suggests that protectionism can lead to increased prices for consumers and potential retaliation from trade partners, which could undermine the benefits of tax cuts. The expectation that these policies will coexist without adverse effects on the economy is counterintuitive and suggests a reliance on short-term gains over long-term economic stability. 7. Energy dominance through environmental rollbacks. The notion that the U.S. can achieve energy dominance through aggressive rollbacks of environmental protections contradicts the global shift towards sustainable energy practices. While the strategy aims to enhance domestic production, it undermines the increasing recognition of environmental stewardship as integral to national security and economic resilience. This perspective challenges the idea that energy independence must include a commitment to sustainable practices. 8. Rhetoric of draining the swamp amidst bureaucratic expansion. Trump's promise to drain the swamp while proposing significant government reforms that may lead to bureaucratic expansion presents a contradictory stance. The expectation that reducing regulations and streamlining government will lead to an efficient bureaucracy conflicts with the reality that government operations often require a level of oversight and complexity to function effectively. This paradox raises questions about the feasibility of reducing bureaucracy while simultaneously enhancing accountability and effectiveness. In conclusion, the strategic priorities outlined for Trump's anticipated second administration reflect several counterintuitive ideas that challenge conventional political and economic wisdom. These priorities illustrate a complex interplay between traditional values, national security, economic policies, and governance that may not align with mainstream expectations or practices. In analyzing Donald Trump's strategic priorities for his anticipated second administration, several key themes and policy areas emerge that warrant deeper exploration. While the report provides a comprehensive overview, certain significant details and implications may be overlooked by many, particularly in the context of contemporary political discourse. 1. The America First agenda and its implications. Trump's America First agenda is not merely a slogan, it encapsulates a broader strategy of nationalism that prioritizes U.S. interests in various domains, including immigration, trade, and foreign relations. The significance of this agenda lies in its potential to reshape the foundational principles of U.S. governance and international engagement. For instance, Trump's plan to withdraw from multilateral agreements in favor of bilateral negotiations could fundamentally alter global trade dynamics. This shift may lead to increased tensions with traditional allies and could potentially destabilize international markets. His emphasis on protecting American jobs through tariffs and deregulation reflects a protectionist stance that resonates with a significant portion of the electorate but poses risks of retaliatory measures from other nations. 2. Aggressive immigration policies. The proposed immigration policies, particularly the reinstatement of the Remain in Mexico program and plans for mass deportations, reveal a significant pivot toward stricter immigration control. The focus on designating drug cartels as terrorist organizations and pursuing the death penalty for certain crimes underscores a hardline approach to law enforcement and public safety. This shift raises critical questions about human rights and the ethical implications of such policies. The emphasis on military involvement in domestic immigration enforcement could blur the lines between military and police functions, raising concerns about civil liberties and the militarization of the border. These aspects are often overshadowed by broader discussions of border security but are crucial for understanding the potential impact on communities and individuals. 3. Economic protectionism versus globalization. Trump's economic policies lean heavily toward protectionism, advocating for tariffs and deregulation to bolster American industries. While many supporters view these measures as necessary to revive manufacturing and protect jobs, the long-term implications of such policies could lead to increased costs for consumers and strained relationships with trading partners. Moreover, the proposed rollback of environmental regulations in favor of fossil fuel production raises significant environmental concerns. The potential withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord and the promotion of policies that favor fossil fuels over renewable energy technologies could hinder the U.S.'s ability to address climate change effectively. This aspect of Trump's agenda, while highlighted in the report, might not receive the level of scrutiny it deserves given the urgency of climate-related issues globally. 4. Government reform and accountability. The commitment to drain the swamp and reform government operations reflects a broader critique of federal bureaucracy. However, the implications of freezing hiring and rescinding various regulations could lead to significant changes in how federal agencies operate. The focus on accountability may resonate with constituents frustrated by perceived inefficiencies in government, but it also raises concerns about the potential sidelining of expertise within federal agencies. The push for reform could result in a lack of necessary oversight and regulation in critical areas such as public health and environmental protection, which have far-reaching consequences for American society. 5. Healthcare and education policies. Trump's healthcare agenda, particularly the intent to repeal the Affordable Care Act (ACA), represents a return to pre-ACA dynamics that left millions without coverage. The emphasis on state-level control over reproductive health aligns with broader conservative values but could also lead to disparities in access to care across states. In education, the anticipated rollback of affirmative action and diversity programs may be portrayed as a move toward meritocracy. However, it risks exacerbating existing inequalities in educational access and outcomes. The implications for marginalized communities, often overlooked in mainstream discussions, could be profound and warrant closer examination. 6. Foreign policy and global relations. Trump's foreign policy strategy, particularly his hardline stance on China and Russia, coupled with a focus on strengthening alliances with Israel, reflects an approach that prioritizes national sovereignty over multilateralism. The potential renegotiation of trade agreements and the rejection of international commitments could lead to isolationist tendencies that diminish U.S. influence on the global stage. The ramifications of this approach extend beyond immediate trade and security concerns. They could undermine long-standing alliances and lead to a re-evaluation of global power structures. Such shifts may not only affect international relations but also have domestic implications as global interdependence continues to shape economic and social landscapes. Conclusion. In summary, while Trump's strategic priorities for his anticipated second term present a clear vision rooted in nationalism and protectionism, the implications of these policies are complex and multifaceted. The potential consequences for immigration, economic policy, environmental regulation, healthcare, education, and foreign relations are significant and demand careful consideration. By delving into these overlooked aspects, we can better understand the broader impact of Trump's agenda on American society and its position in the world. 1. National security and immigration policies. Trump's strategic priority emphasizes a stringent immigration policy aimed at securing the U.S. border. This includes reinstating the Remain in Mexico program, deploying military forces for border security, and targeting undocumented immigrants for mass deportation. The classification of drug cartels as terrorist organizations and the push for severe penalties against those committing heinous crimes further underline the administration's focus on national security. This aspect invites in-depth discussion on its implications for civil liberties, human rights, and the social fabric of immigrant communities in the U.S. 2. Economic policy and energy independence. Trump's agenda seeks to enhance economic independence through an energy-dominant strategy that involves rolling back environmental regulations and promoting fossil fuel production. The withdrawal from the Paris Climate Accord and the focus on tax cuts and tariffs reflect a protectionist approach aimed at revitalizing American industries Analyzing this priority raises critical questions about the balance between environmental sustainability and economic growth, the long-term viability of fossil fuels, and the potential consequences for climate change and international relations. 3. Government reform and accountability. The plan to drain the swamp and reduce bureaucracy is a significant part of Trump's strategy. Focusing on accountability within federal agencies and halting the hiring of non-essential personnel. The proposed executive orders to rescind Biden-era regulations indicate a strong deregulatory approach. This priority can lead to discussions around the effectiveness of governance, the role of federal agencies in public service, and the broader implications of reducing regulatory oversight on various industries. 4. Healthcare and education reforms. Trump's anticipated healthcare reforms, particularly the repeal of the Affordable Care Act alongside a focus on state control over reproductive health, highlight a commitment to conservative values. Similarly, in education, the emphasis on school choice and potential rollbacks of affirmative action policies underscore a shift towards more traditional educational frameworks. This area invites analysis of the potential impacts on access to healthcare and education equity and opportunities, and the broader societal implications of these reforms on marginalized communities. These points encapsulate Trump's strategic priorities and present rich avenues for analysis regarding their potential impacts on American society and governance. 1. The New Deal 1933 to 1939. Franklin D. Roosevelt's New Deal was a series of programs and policies aimed at economic recovery during the Great Depression. Similar to Trump's America First agenda, FDR focused on national recovery, job creation, and reform of government practices. Roosevelt's administration enacted sweeping reforms in banking, labor, and public works, emphasizing economic independence and social welfare. The New Deal's emphasis on direct government intervention in the economy parallels Trump's focus on government reform and economic protectionism. 2. Reaganomics 1980s. The economic policies of President Ronald Reagan, often referred to as Reaganomics, prioritized tax cuts, deregulation, and a reduction in government spending, aiming to stimulate economic growth and reduce inflation. Reagan's approach to foreign policy also emphasized a strong military presence and a tough stance against communism, similar to Trump's focus on national security and a robust military. Both administrations aimed to reshape the economic landscape, promote American interests, and reduce the regulatory burden on businesses. 3. The Contract with America 1994. Introduced by Newt Gingrich and the Republican Party, the Contract with America outlined a series of policy initiatives aimed at reforming government, promoting economic growth, and enhancing national security. This agenda included tax cuts, welfare reform, and a focus on law and order, reflecting themes found in Trump's strategic priorities. The contract sought to hold the government accountable and reduce bureaucracy, mirroring Trump's intent to drain the swamp and increase government efficiency. Future outlook, predictions for Trump's second administration. As Donald Trump embarks on his second term, the implications of his strategic priorities will resonate across various sectors of American society and governance. Based on his stated policies and the political landscape, here are key predictions for the future under Trump's administration. 1. National security and immigration. Trump's aggressive strategy on immigration and national security is likely to lead to a significant tightening of border control measures. Expect to see increased military presence at the border. The deployment of military and National Guard personnel will become a more common sight as Trump seeks to bolster border security. Legislative push for immigration reform. Anticipate efforts to push through laws that enforce stricter immigration policies and enhance penalties for undocumented immigrants. This could lead to increased tensions with immigrant communities and civil rights groups. Designation of drug cartels as terrorist organizations. This will likely result in escalated military operations against drug trafficking organizations, impacting U.S.-Mexico relations. 2. Economic policies. The economic landscape will shift towards protectionism and deregulation, with potential outcomes including revocation of Biden-era economic policies. Trump will likely reverse many of the regulations enacted under Biden, particularly those related to environmental protections, which could lead to a resurgence in fossil fuel production. Corporate tax cuts and tariffs. Corporations may see reduced taxes, while tariffs on imports could provoke retaliatory measures from trading partners, impacting American exporters. Infrastructure investment rollbacks. A comprehensive review of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act may lead to cutbacks on federal spending for infrastructure, potentially stalling projects vital for community development and job creation. 3. Government reform. Trump's vision of a streamlined government may manifest in significant changes. Bureaucratic reductions. Expect hiring freezes in non-essential areas and significant cuts to agencies deemed unnecessary, leading to possible job losses in federal employment. Increased accountability measures. There may be new laws aimed at increasing transparency and accountability of federal employees, impacting how government operates and interacts with the public. 4. Healthcare and education. Reforms in healthcare and education could reshape these sectors dramatically. Repeal of the Affordable Care Act. Trump's administration will likely push for a complete repeal, which may lead to millions losing healthcare coverage unless alternative plans are introduced. State control over reproductive health. States may gain more autonomy in regulating reproductive health, potentially leading to stark variances in access to services across the country. Support for school choice. An increased emphasis on school choice and charter school funding may reshape public education, creating competition among schools but also increasing disparities. 5. Foreign policy. Trump's approach to foreign policy is expected to be confrontational and unilateral. Deteriorating relations with China. Expect a hardline stance against China, with actions to revoke trade agreements and impose tariffs that could lead to economic friction. Reassessment of NATO commitments. Trump may seek to negotiate terms that require European allies to increase their defense spending, leading to potential shifts in global power dynamics. Support for Israel. His administration will likely strengthen ties with Israel, potentially leading to more U.S. involvement in Middle Eastern conflicts. 6. Cultural and social policies. Trump's commitment to traditional values may lead to significant cultural shifts. Legislation on gender and family definitions. Policies aimed at reinforcing traditional definitions of gender could create legal battles over civil rights and anti-discrimination laws. Educational reforms. The administration may move to dismantle affirmative action and diversity programs, which could provoke significant public outcry and legal challenges. 7. Environmental policies. Environmental regulations are poised for significant rollbacks. Rescinding climate agreements. Trump's anticipated withdrawal from international climate agreements like the Paris Accord may lead to increased greenhouse gas emissions and impact global climate initiatives. Deregulation of environmental policies. Expect a push to eliminate regulations aimed at reducing pollution, which could lead to public health concerns and environmental degradation. Conclusion. The future under Trump's second administration is set to be characterized by a stark shift towards an aggressive America First approach. Each of these predictions underscores a deepening divide in American politics and society, with potential long-term ramifications for governance, civil rights, and international relations. As Trump implements his agenda, the response from various stakeholders, including state governments, civil rights organizations, and international allies, will shape the trajectory of his presidency and the broader political landscape in the U.S.